So key ideas when understanding trig is really we're dealing with similar triangles and equivalent proportions or equivalent ratios. So we can set up ratios either between triangles or within triangles to solve a similar triangle problem. And really that's what it's about. Trig in particular though is comparing, the trig ratio is usually comparing, well it is comparing two sides of the same triangle. And then you say, so you compare the same two sides of a different triangle, and then we can use this proportional relationship. And again, with this proportional relationship, we have this times divide relationship going this way and vertically, and we can solve it any way we want. We can solve it algebraically using cross multiplication, and that's all perfectly fine. That's all the mathematics. Once we set up the ratio, the math is just ratio math. And the difference, I mentioned this before, trig ratios are just not a scale factor. So if you have all the sides and you want to compare the sides as a scale factor and solve it that way, that's perfectly okay. But technically you're not really using trig, okay? Because the trig ratio, or you're not using trig ratios, because sine, cos, tan ratios, we only looked at tan so far, but those ratios are specifically ratios between two sides of the same triangle. So the other part is, when do we use a calculator? And the calculator is only used really when we're going to go from ratio to angle or angle to ratio. It's basically our translator when we have the shape of a triangle given lengths of sides, for example 2 and 5, that gives us the shape of this triangle, right triangle. We could also have another description of a triangle given an angle. We can say that this is 63 degrees. Okay, and that also gives us the shape of the triangle. Now they're really telling us the same thing. They're telling us shape, but one is telling us in terms of lengths or ratios, another one's telling us in terms of degrees or turn, an angular turn. So we just need to be able to convert between the two, and we use the sine, cos, tan function on our calculator to when we have an angle and we want to calculate the ratio. So it looks like this going through our function here. Okay, if we want to go the other way, if we have the ratio information, we want to figure out the angle, we use the the arc sine or the inverse sine, cos, and tan functions. And then if we give it that function the ratio, it'll convert it to an angle for us. So this ratio can be converted to an angle. Okay, same with this angle can be converted to a ratio using the sine, cos, tan functions here. So we're going to look at the sine and cos functions, which are other ratios. It's just comparing other sides of the right triangle. Okay, and we've looked at tan so far.